Hello, everyone, and welcome to the 40th Stately Office Hours. We've really been keeping this going. And I'm back. So COVID didn't get me completely. So this is the live stream that we do, attempting to do it every week, where we talk about what we've been working on at Stately with our Stately tools and on XState. We have a lot of cool demos to show you today. We know you love demos. So let's just quickly start off by going around the team and let's introduce ourselves. So I am Laura and I do designer and developer relations and all kinds of other things at Stately. How about you, Farzad?
Hey, I'm Farzad and I'm from Finland. It's actually rainy here. It's a classic Finnish summer, as Laura says. And I'm a lead engineer in Stately.
Yeah, the Irish summer is much like the Finnish summer. And how about you, Kevin? How's the weather where you are?
Hi, everyone. Oh, yeah. So first, the weather report. It's actually very hot and sunny. So made sure to get the kids out to the playground early before they burn. But yeah, my name is Kevin, and I'm located in the United States, in the East Coast, and doing software engineering at Stately and having a great time.
Hey, so there's just the three of us today. There's folks traveling and doing all sorts this week, but it's still going to be a great one. We've got lots to share with you. First of all, we want to say thank you to everyone who has subscribed to us on YouTube. There's 1,000 of you now, which is a pretty cool number, and we really appreciate it. Matt's been sharing some really great videos, all sorts of things about XState recently, stuff about TypeScript. You know, that's Matt's specialty. So I hope you're enjoying those. And if you haven't checked them out yet, if you view us on YouTube, we're Stately AI, and you should be able to find all the videos pretty easily on there. There's a whole tutorial series on using XState as well that I really recommend. Really short and sweet little videos you can get through, like little bite-sized chunks. They're really great. Have either of you watched any of Matt's videos recently?
Absolutely. Yeah, I watch the TypeScript videos, the XState videos. They're great. And I love bite-sized videos. It's really nice. You can watch them multiple times and really, kind of absorb them.
Totally. Yeah, it helps me digest things as well, especially when a lot of the concepts are new to me or a bit tricky. It's a nice way of easing yourself into it. We importantly wanted to say that we've now got the Stately survey, which we have attempted to do yearly. So this is the second Stately survey we've done ever. And we would really like to get your feedback on our tools and on XState and tell us a little bit more about how you're using them, or if you're not using them, why not? And I'm going to do the magic thing here where I'm going to share the link on all of our platforms, if I can, live, so you can actually go straight to that link and get going filling out the survey already. So there we go. That is now on YouTube and on Twitter and on LinkedIn and on Discord. And so you can, it's just a short survey. It should only take about 5 minutes of your time. All of the questions are optional, and we would really, really appreciate your feedback. It will help us make our tools much better for you and to accommodate your use cases and your particular needs. Now, without further ado, Farzad, you have lots of cool stuff to share with us. What do you want to start with?
Sure. So we're going to start with demos right now. Sure. So I think from the beginning, we actually need to share my screen. So I just go on and share my screen, right?
This is the little share button at the bottom there. There we go.
Right. Great. Okay, so for the past couple of weeks, I've been leading a feature for the Stately editor called Context. So the context is the same as the XState context, that you add some infinite state or some data, if you will, to the state machines and the state chart configuration using XState. But now you should be able to do that with the editor once we release this feature to production. This feature is still behind the feature flag, and we haven't released it yet. So we're just gonna we just had prepared it for the demo here for the office hours, and it's still in the early stages of its MVP scope. I'm going to talk about the scope of the MVP a little later on, but first of all, let's just see how it works. So as you know, there's a plus button here. You can click on that. You can assign a key to the context. You can call it done, and for now, you can just choose between the three primitive types for the type of the value that you want to put in the context for this particular key. You can choose a string, and then you would have a text input that you can write any string in it. You can choose a number, and we would render a number input for you. So you can just add any numbers here for the initial value, or you can actually choose a Boolean. So you can assign true or false as the initial value. For now, we have decided to keep everything nullable. So that means if you try to initialize a context value as an empty object or empty value, you can assign it to null, but you have to do it explicitly by checking this checkbox here. And once you add to context, it will be in the machine context from now on, and it will be saved on your digraph. Depending on how you're using the stately editor, whether it's in the new page, which will persist it to the local storage for you temporarily, or you save it, which will persist it to the registry database, we will keep the context in the machine diagram configuration so that you don't lose this metadata later on. As soon as you create a context item, you would see a clear button here that once clicked will clear the entire context object for you. And you can go on and expand this little buddy here to see some more details of the context item that you have. And then you can go on and change the initial value if you want, maybe change it to number and add 12 to it. And all the changes will be immediate, and you would see them here. There's a bunch of validation happening, for example, but basically you can't add any empty keys because it wouldn't make sense to have an empty key in the context object, or you can't have a mismatch between the type that you choose here for the value and the value that you actually provide for the initial value. Say you have a number and they just leave it empty without assigning it a null, we would validate that this is not valid anymore. You would, of course, have the same sort of validations when you're editing the context as well, and every context value can be removed too. So let's say that we have added it here. You would also get like a summary view that is a very, very summarized way of interacting with your context item. So you can just edit the item key as you go on here, and you can add any sort of initial values that you want here. Let's just choose another type here, and you would see the checkbox. So basically, you would get the same type of rendered input here as the initial value in the summary view as well. But this is very, very, very primitive right now. We're working on supporting arrays and objects, and maybe have a little rich text editor there to be able to format your keys and values, or get some sort of basic syntax highlighting to just make your life a little easier to interact with objects and arrays. And as the scope of the MVP, not only do we want to create and update the context object, but we also should be able to add assignments to the machine in the canvas area. And we're working with the design team to be able to find a good experience to be able to visually deal with the assignment actions. The context is the first stepping stone into a roadmap that we call XState parity, which is a way for us to be able to mirror whatever feature we have available in the XState config as a library with the features that we provide to you in the visual editor in a low-code way. For the last thing, or maybe not the last thing, when you try to use the editor embedded in the VS Code extension, we decided to, for the scope of the MVP, make all the context operations here read-only, so that your text code, your code string in the code editor, is going to be the only source that can check and change these contexts here in the machine configuration in the diagram. So you shouldn't be able to interact with them while you're working with the VS Code extension. You can just work with it here in the web editor. Another thing is that since this is now persisted to the configuration of the diagram that you're creating, you can go on and export it to JSON and probably go to the visualizer and paste it there. And when you render it, you can see that you would get the right type of the context object there. Maybe we should also be able to, provide some sort of validation later on, maybe even give you a way to put some special constraints. Let's say that you want like a context value to be of type integer, or just a natural number in a particular range, for example. And we should be able to provide all sorts of constraints for you there. We should be able to give you like more detailed views of putting these constraints on the values. Basically, sky's the limit here. We have a lot of ideas, and we yet don't know what we're going to put in the scope of the MVP in that sense. But maybe exporting to TypeScript can go there, because we're using a standard called JSON schema that can help us automatically generate the interface of your data in the context to probably TypeScript interfaces. Maybe it's not a perfect export at the beginning, but it will actually be a great starting point for you to be able to use this export to TS. But we don't know that whether it finds its way to the scope of the MVP of this feature or not. But we will get there eventually.
Yeah, Richard says nice. Would be awesome to generate the schema.context section too.
Definitely. Yeah. That's the plan.
Yeah. And thanks, Richard, for all your comments. Richard has also already filled out the survey too. So thanks, Richard. And if anyone does have any questions or any feedback on these features, do let us know. You can let us know in the comments on YouTube or on Twitter or on LinkedIn. If we don't get to them during the live stream, we'll make sure that we get to them later on. So what else have you got to share with us, Farzad?
Okay, now we can move on from this context feature and go to another little feature that I've been working on. This is not an official feature right now, so don't get too hyped about it. It's actually a little, how to say, like a power user mode feature, something like that we can call it. Let's say that, let me hide this. Let's say that you were working with Chrome developer tools, and you would see something like this. You would see an input here called the live expressions, which you would be able to watch a value or the changes to a particular variable. And you can say that, for example, document the title. I want to watch and monitor the changes on that, and go on and like change it to something else, and you would see that the value here would update. We wanted actually to provide the same thing here in the simulation mode for your machines. So when you go to the simulation mode, you would be able to add some live expressions here to make some queries on the state for now, for example. So you can say state.can, for example, event, which means that whether the state node has a support for receiving event of type event here. So it's true. And once you interact with the machine in the simulation mode and change the state, it's live and it changes the value, exactly like how the Chrome developer tools has its own live expressions. And you can go and clear it. This is very, very much experimental, and I'm actually demoing it from a live deployment, preview deployment URL. I'm not sure whether it would find its way to the editor, but this is something that David loved as well. And we know that this is going to be very useful later on. We're thinking about improvements to the UI, maybe show a slice of the history of the commands that you've used before, find a way to persist these live expressions, maybe temporarily to local storage. Nobody wants them saved on the diagram itself. And I don't know, maybe some sort of low-code way of providing these sort of APIs. Maybe if a non-developer is working with a stately editor, they don't want to know the XState API at all to be able to make these queries, or not even try to guess them if they know them. It should be very easy to just press a bunch of buttons or some other UI elements and get these queries done. So but basically, this is the idea for you. Sorry, Laura. This is the idea that for the simulation mode, you can watch and monitor the values, some sort of queries to help you debug and validate the model that you've created.
So you're thinking maybe you could construct the queries out of like little building blocks of
I think so.
Typical values, I guess.
Yeah, I had some, I wanted to start some discussions with our design team to figure out what's the low-code way of doing it, because I don't really like people to actually go on and write these queries. Maybe it's very convenient for developers because as developers, we tend to, go for the power. But like maybe non-developers don't really like to deal with these sorts of coding. And well, we're a low-code tool after all, so we should be able to have some sort of visual way to do it. It's really weird that 1Password is trying to kind of persist this.
It thinks it's a password field or something.
Yeah,
it does. Yeah. That does make me think of like regex tools and things that you might use for writing regular expressions, and there are a lot out there that, like me as someone who would certainly not be able to write a regular expression without some building blocks there for me, and allows you to just sort of drag different like parts of the expression together to find out what you want.
Right. Yeah. That totally makes sense. Yeah. I think it should be like that. And well, I'm a developer and don't really want to write regex myself as well. No. So I appreciate any sort of low code tooling that would provide these building blocks, because I think it's also really dependent on how people, learn, because people have different mediums of learning. And for example, I'm a visual learner, so I actually would appreciate some visual building blocks here for being able to build this very, very rapidly.
And what kind of use cases would you have for, what kind of things would you be looking out for in simulation mode? Like what would you use the expressions for?
Well, the inspiration for this feature has been the Chrome DevTools live expressions, but when I use XState myself, most of the time I find myself validating the model that I created by trying to plugging it into a web framework like React or Vue and try to make a view for it and see if it works in practice. So for that, I try to subscribe to the interpreter by saying, hey, log me all the events that you receive, or tell me when you're transitioning, what's the new value of the state, what's the context holding right now. If I had this live expression somehow, it's more like a reactive statement, right? It's like you should be able to validate what's happening in your interpreter that's built on top of your machine that you created, but by creating these reactive statements here and watch them to debug your model. For example, I wanted my machine to change some external metadata, probably in a global scope or something on the window, for example, or document title, as we saw at the beginning of the demo. I want to change that when I enter second state, and I should be able to write some sort of query here to make sure that that action is being triggered, something like that. I use these sort of console logs and debuggers and stuff like that to validate my model. So I might as well find this really, really helpful to help me write those queries.
Yeah, Kevin, do you use the live expressions in the Chrome DevTools? Do you use
definitely.
Chrome even?
I use Chrome, I use the DevTools, and I use the watch expressions, for example, or very similar to live expressions. And so I think it's really great to just be able to inspect, your machines and the different states. One use case that I can imagine here is that, as soon as you have any level, like let's say 2 different levels of machines, something nested inside something else, then sometimes you actually, you are able to respond to, let's say, the immediate levels events that you can receive, or the actions you can receive, and also ones that are already on the parent level too. And it may be easier to see that as a flattened sort of, list of expressions to recognize that, oh, don't forget, you can also, get this event from the, the parent level as well. Whereas in the visualizer, you actually, you maybe are only focused on the immediate node, and then you're not always looking at the other levels outside. So this could be super helpful there too, I think.
Yeah, I think this state.next events can actually keep a list of all the events that are valid in this state, or the machine will react to them. So yeah, if you're right, like if you have some sort of events that are coming from the parent as well, like a global event listener or something, they will be also listed here. So you can say like this is an empty array, and then when you go to first state, you can receive event. So it's going to show up here.
And I know that Nick, as part of the product design work, is looking a lot at different ways in which we can view and explore the machines and different levels that we can look at them, so that to make it easier for them to use day to day and for everyone's different use cases. And that is why responding to the survey is really great, because you can let us know what your use cases are for these as well.
Exactly.
Danny says it's super cool. Carlos likes it. Jay says it's such a good idea. Going just back to the previous feature that you demoed, Eric asked, is this context feature already available, or is it coming soon?
It's coming soon, probably very soon. We got to see if we want to release it partially, or we want to go for the entire scope of the MVP and release it at once. This is something that the team needs to decide yet, but it's going to be soon available. Eric, I'm gonna tell you that personally. Don't worry about that.
Yes, so if anyone has any feedback on that, whether they would find it useful to have it really soon and it's like in a more basic form, then let us know. In fact, that's a really good point for me to just shout out our Canny site. That's, I guess, it's a combination of feature requests, a roadmap, feedback. If you go to statelyai.canny.io, and there we have a list of features, and we're working on prioritizing them based on your feedback and what you find most useful. And you can vote on the features there. And it's also producing a little roadmap to give you an idea of when we're going to be able to work on each of those features too. So if you have anything that you want to request or anything you think we're missing from any of the Stately tools, you just jump on there and let us know, and jump on there and see if there's anything on there that you already think would be valuable to you, and you can let us know that you would find that useful too.
Yeah, I second that. I think we already have a very good list of feature requests in Canny, and just go on, vote there, and we'll pick it up by the votes.
Yeah, I'm going to look into a way of trying to show that roadmap in our docs and stuff like that too, because I think it's useful to have one place to find all of that information and to encourage people to go to, rather than lots of different roadmaps all over the place. It's good for us to be able to keep an eye on one as well. And so you got something else to share with us?
Yeah, one last little thing is something that me and Andres Matish has been working on. We have been working on this. So it was supposed to be a very, very fast implementation. That's like, it's a very useful feature. So basically it is when you try to view the machine, like on the first load of the editor screen, you should be able to see an auto layout plus fit to content version of the machine, meaning that we have performed an auto layout on your machine, and then we have done a sort of a smart operations to make sure that this entire diagram fits into the viewport of the available space in the canvas. So meaning that when you like trying to mess around with the layout here and then probably take this out of the viewport, when you load it again, you would see this and the layout version of it, and then fit the content version of it. So that was the idea. Unfortunately, I can't demo it on the web editor because I haven't configured it yet on the deployment, but I can do that on the VS Code extension. So let's say that you're using the editor after release this feature in the VS Code extension, and you have a very, very basic machine here. It's the initial state is A. It goes from what happened?
Oh, you got expose on. If you waggle your mouse in one of the corners of the screen, it will come back. There you go.
Oh, great. Yeah. Mac surprises. Yeah, and then you have a bunch of states here, A and B, and then on event move, you go to B from A. And you try to see the visualization of that in the VS Code extension. Try to open it here, and you can see that it won't work. You can see that there is a layout metadata here written to your file, and the machine as we have performed auto layout and fit the content on it. So to prove that it works, we can mess around with the layout, as I said, take it out of the viewport, close it, and then we have to make sure that we remove that line there because that's the metadata of the layout. And if you keep it there, the next time that you open it, it will persist the same layout. But we removed it to make sure that the editor starts fresh. And you can see that not only did we perform an auto layout on the machine, we also tried to make sure that we could squeeze it into the available visible area here. So let's try that once again. Remove the metadata for the layout, and voila, it works. Yeah, this is going to be really, really great because we have received a few feedback from people saying that, hey, when I open my VS Code extension, I have to just look around and figure out where my machine is. And most people don't know that we have an option here called fit to content. Not only can you do a right click and see that in the context menu, you can also open this zoom panel here and see that here you can also use Shift+1 as a shortcut to enable that. So you can do this and it will bring it to the center and try to squeeze into the available space in the viewport. So now we do that automatically for you. I don't know if it's a good idea to do it for everybody. Maybe it's useful for the majority of our users. But I think it would be a good idea to expose this as a sort of setting, at least in the VS extension for now, so that people have a configurable way of telling us whether they want this to be enabled or not. Because sometimes you just want to persist to the custom layout that you created. But right now in the VS Code extension, the workaround would be to just keep this little lazy string here so that we know that we have to adhere to that layout. If you remove that, it's going to be a fresh auto layout plus fit to content.
Farzad, this looks really great and very convenient. I'm wondering, so are we talking about the idea of decoupling the automatic fit to content from the, let's say, the layout saving that somebody actually explicitly set? Is that something that could also be an option there?
So if I understand his question correctly, right now we persist the metadata, like we persist the information about the layout. So if you try to interact with the layout here and change it, we persist that to some sort of temporary storage, so we know that where to start with what layout. Okay. With this feature, this is going to be overridden. So you could say that it's a little pointless to persist that metadata, but if we expose this as a part of the setting and don't do that automatically, then this is not going to be overwritten. Am I answering your question? I have
So I guess
feeling that
it's very close. I guess my question is, if somebody's already explicitly laid out their machine and then they close the file, can we auto fit that layout as a separate thing, like an auto fit separate from the blowing it away?
Right. Yeah, so unfortunately the feature is to do the auto layout and fit to content in a sequence right now. So they're not decoupled, yeah. But maybe it would be a good idea once we're working with that setting, we could also say what like sequence of things do you want us to do? Do you want to auto layout only, fit to content only, or do auto layout and fit to content at the same time? But again, like if you want to keep the layout as is, just leave the string as it. So we wouldn't touch that. Maybe we're doing fit to content right now. I don't know. This is still in review, so bear with me.
It's definitely a common issue with any canvas-based app, is getting lost on the canvas. I can't tell you how many times on Figma I've gone to view somebody's file and found that I'm about 1 million miles away from whatever the content is. And I spent ages just scrubbing around trying to find where it is. That is why when I'm creating graphics, I always set them at the 0, 0 X and Y axis. But not all applications have the option of doing that.
Make it predictable for the next time.
Yeah, or it's hacking your way around an app that doesn't design it for you. If it does it for you, then you don't have to worry about it.
Exactly. So it appears that we're doing fit to content regardless of this string here. Maybe we skip the auto layout part and still do the fit to content, which could be a good thing. It's not a bug, it's a feature, but maybe we need to catch that in the code review. Andres, if you're watching this later, we have to do a code review on this.
Yeah, I can see that fit to content is less likely to create confusion than auto layout. Like some people do want to lay out their state charts in a specific way, whereas I think fit to content, you're less likely to be worried about that.
Yes, like for now, for the set of features that we have in the roadmap right now, it makes sense that fit to content should be the default because it's a little harmless. But later on, when we introduce things like custom views for the editor, maybe focus modes and stuff like that, maybe you want to start off your layout from a certain, like a particular state node or something like that. And then at that time, fit to content is no longer harmless. But we have a long way to achieve that. So good.
Angela agrees.
Yeah, so basically this wraps up the 3 features that me and the team have been working on for the past couple of weeks. Yeah,
that's fantastic. We always love demos in an office hours. And that's a reminder that if you have any feedback on these features, you can let us know on Twitter. We're Stately AI on Twitter. We're Stately on LinkedIn. You can join our Discord. I haven't mentioned that yet today. How could I? There we go. Discord.gg/XState. We have a dedicated office hours channel on there, but you can also ask us in any channel. That's great. And give us your feedback there. But specifically, if you want to talk about features, Canny is a really great place to do it. And we found it's a little bit easier to organize and prioritize than using GitHub when you're talking about features rather than bugs and quirks and things like that. So go join us on there. Now, as you can see, some of the team aren't here, partly because David and Jenny have been at conferences. So last week, I think it was the last couple of weeks, they've done React Day and React Next, lots of React-oriented conferences. But one that's not React-oriented is what you're speaking at in September, Farzad.
Yeah, so I'm going to be speaking at Svelte Summit, which is happening in Stockholm in September. And I'm going to be talking about implementing the actor model architecture using the external stores model of Svelte, which is going to be very, very cool, hopefully.
Yeah, it's going to be cool. And that is a dedicated Svelte conference, which would be great for any Svelte fans out there.
But don't come to that conference for me. Come from Rich Harris and Svelte.
No, go for Farzad. He's a great speaker. You want to see him speak. It will be really great. And I will be speaking in August 25th, 26th in Zurich, Front Conference. I've spoken there previously as well. I have emceed there previously too. And I'm going back for a 3rd time because I love it so much in Zurich. So if you are in the area, come say hi to me. And I'll be talking more of a design focus, but talking about design deliverables and where state charts might fit in there. So if you're interested in that from a design perspective, I'd love your feedback and your input on my talk as well, because I don't know whether I'm talking absolute rubbish or whether it is something that's a good way of looking at deliverables. So it would be really great if I can meet any of you there. And
everybody who knows you, Laura, they know that you're a great speaker. And you have a history with speaking for like a long time, so you're great.
Well, I've been speaking for a long time, but that doesn't mean that I can't write talks that they seem like they make sense to me, and then when I give them, I'm like, did this make sense to anybody else? So it's nice to have feedback and to meet people at these events and help them improve my way of thinking about things too, because that's what I like so much about conferences, is it's that it's a dialogue. It's not just about one person presenting something to other people. It's about all those conversations that you have afterwards that enhance all of our understanding. And we've also got a lot of the team are going to be at React Finland, Farzad's local conference. As we
I don't have a flag here, but imagine a flag here.
And I have failed to write down the dates here. It's in September, I believe. And so at the beginning of September, and it will be lovely to try but I think that's going to it won't let me stop the I can't hide the banner. That's okay. The banner is there forever now. I'm just going to have a quick look through your comments and questions. If you've got any comments or questions, you can ask us in the YouTube comments or on Twitter or LinkedIn or on our Discord. This is Angela's thoughts on the auto layout. The root machine can be moved, but if the inner contents move, it can be a cognitive shock. I think that's a really good way of doing it.
I think we don't yet have the partial auto layout in place. It's not yet a practical feature, but as long as the root machine and the inner machines have a relative layout and distance, I don't think moving the root machine would be such a bad idea, right? Because they're still going to be in the same scale.
Yeah, it's kind of, I think of like the root machine as being what you get when you fit to content, whereas the inner contents is if you're doing auto layout.
That's true, yeah. What the fit to content does underlying, like in the underlying mechanism, is just basically altering the view box scale of the SVG that we're rendering to. So we're not changing anything in the machine. We're just changing the viewport size.
It's a good way of understanding those inner workings. Angelo said, would love some links to the videos if they put them up after. Yes, I always try to put the links to the videos in the YouTube videos and post them on our social media platforms after office hours. Sometimes that ends up being next Tuesday because just of how my timing works out. But I will eventually put them up. I think if you look on our Twitter, you'll be able to see the link to David's talk from React Norway. I've already sent a link to that up there. So anyone on the team have anything else you wanted to share this week? No is an okay answer. We've done an awful lot. It's been some really great demos. And if you missed last week's office hours, I would really recommend watching it because that was a demo-tastic one as well. And I really enjoyed catching up on it this week. It was like almost an hour's worth of demos and discussion. It was a really great one. And it is now has links and corrected subtitles and everything in there. So if you want to go back and watch it, hope you enjoy. And we will be back with you next week. We won't be around the week after unless we manage to do some kind of special office hours from our team retreat in Copenhagen, which we might manage. That could be quite fun. Absolute chaos, I imagine, if we can get a good enough internet connection. But we will be here next week and share with you everything that we're up to before we all go off traveling. So it was lovely to see you all. Thank you, everyone, for joining us again, and we will see you next week. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.
All right, thanks, everyone.